Welcome to the second episode of the Power Law Investor. Today is August 26th, 2024, and this is our weekly update for how we're using the Power Law to make investment decisions, moving between Kaspa, Bitcoin, and cash. So let's get started. Here you can see is that we're looking at today's date. Bitcoin is around 63,500 and Kaspa is trading just below 17 cents. So moving on to our allocation and seeing how we've performed over the last week. Let's just highlight some of this. You can see what's going on. Every day, each of these dates, we purchase $100 worth of assets, and the algorithm determines whether we are going to use how much of that goes into Kaspa, how much of that goes into Bitcoin. And this uses the returns from the different power laws to give us, and the reliability of the different estimates, taking the risk and the return into account to determine what's going on. So let's take a look at how that has performed so far. If we look at what's happening, we've invested a total of $700, and our return over that $700 has been $21, resulting in a weekly return of 3%, which is quite good. Most of that is driven, of course, by the jump in Bitcoin prices. On the 23rd, Bitcoin was trading at 60,000. It has jumped over 64,000, primarily in response to the comments by Jay Powell that loosening of monetary policy is along the way. I think this is not a representative weekly return, but it does give you an idea of how quickly these different assets can move. Additionally, you can also see that Kaspa, which was trading around 16 cents, jumped all the way to 17 cents, which is a considerable increase also, about 5% or so, maybe a little bit more, 5.5%, 6% in terms of the return that it has over this week. So you can see we've already had about some increase, which was around 4% over here. Let's clean this up so we can see a little more clearly. And then that dropped around as the prices have started dropping, particularly for Kaspa. But as you can see, these assets are particularly volatile, but this volatility is something that we want. Of course, we don't want downwards volatility, but having upwards volatility is where we get these returns from. So as you can see with this algorithm over here, let's just go to a different color. Red sounds good. The amount of allocations that we have between the three asset classes changes. Now, ignoring cash for the minute, you can see that when the Bitcoin price goes up, the amount of allocation goes from 24 down to 22. This is because based on the power law, we now expect a smaller percentage return. So the algorithm is emphasizing Kaspa rather than Bitcoin. And this again takes into account of how much data we have, what the expected return we have, what is our confidence in the data, etc. So going back again to the overall portfolio, we've generated a return of $21 so far, which is what you can also see over here. So coming back to what the algorithm is telling us about today, this will be the same. Let me see. Do this. Here we go. This is again showing us that the Kaspa allocation right now should be 58 cents and Bitcoin at 22 cents. This is exactly the same as we see in this last column over here, where we are looking at, this is today's date, so you can see the algorithm has already made the allocation. We're looking at 22% for Bitcoin and 58% for Kaspa. This is just being represented here in this particular graph. Coming back to how our power law was derived, and we can see some of the math behind here, we can see that the trend value for Bitcoin right now should be about $75,000, and we're trading at $65,000 roughly. So that's giving us a discount of about 13%. And based upon this, our expected return for a year is about 65%. Previously, when Bitcoin was trading at 59,000, when you can look at my previous video, you'll see that the returns were almost 78, almost 80%. So as the price of Bitcoin goes higher, the expected returns become a little bit lower, but still 65% is excellent. Coming then to what we see for Kaspa, again, let's go back on this. For Kaspa, we can see that the expected return is considerably higher at 432%, which is fantastic. But again, this is not as reliable as our expectations for Bitcoin in the power law because we have much less data to work with. In a future video, I will be talking about this particular zone for Kaspa, which let me clean this up a little bit. So if we look at this particular zone, you can see that Kaspa has been trading below this trend line for a while. The purple dotted line and the green dotted line are discounts of 30% and 40% to the trend line as highlighted over here. So we can see that in Kaspa, we've had this section that's been trading below the trend line. Is this something to worry about? Does this impact our calculations? This will be covered in a separate video. But for now, we're still following the math as is, and we expect to have an annual return using Kaspa of about 432% as highlighted in this section over here. So that's it for our weekly update. I will provide another weekly update shortly next week, where we'll see how this particular strategy of ours evolves over time. Again, we noticed that 20% of the allocation is in cash. That is over here. And the reason we keep it to 20% is to make sure that if there are any particular opportunities that come up, if there's a particular crash that shows up in the market, we have funds to deploy for that particular purpose. Again, this has been your Power Law Investor update for August 26, 2024. If you found this useful, please like and subscribe. These updates will be coming at least once a week. And if you have suggestions for improvements or other thoughts, please comment below. Thank you and see you again soon.